calling in, signing on to our first woohoo 2016 forum. As I got to choose the theme for this forum as the others, I thought it'd be really cool to start the year off on a sustainable high. So our theme is Sustainable Seas. Later on in this lovely little chat, we are going to have Guy Dean, who works at Albion Fisheries, come and talk to us about the literal sustainable seafood from kind of more of a business perspective, because I cannot speak on that at all. So I'd like to start these forums with like kind of a little bit of updates, especially because it's been about a month since I have seen you guys and spoken to you. And now that it's 2016, they are kind of telling us the things that happened in 2015. So in 2015, we saw over 2 million square kilometers of the oceans protected by new marine reserves. So that is a huge win. Chile, Easter Island, New Zealand, Palau, the UK, Patagonia, all are places that either expanded already existing reserves or created brand new ones. Unfortunately, this really, really large number, that is 2 million kilometers squared, only gets us to about 1% of the ocean. But that's 1% more than we had, and we already had a bit. So like I said, we are at about 4% now. New technology was introduced, especially with Global Fishing Watch, and these are new ways to combat illegal fishing. One that's really big is the Pew Charitable Trust Virtual Watch Room, and these technologies, while they're still in the prototype phase, can pretty much revolutionize the way that illegal fishing is caught. So they're using new things like satellites and drone technology to really get into the depths of oceans and seas to catch these illegal fishing and stop them before they can harm to a greater extent, which is amazing and is going to be very useful. One that I hope everyone knows is that ocean conservation became one of the UN's new Sustainable Development Goals, specifically number 14, which is awesome. This is the first time that the oceans have a dedicated UN agenda, and it comes for the next 15 years, so up until the year 2020. This is a big surprise, especially when you consider for a very long time at COP21, the oceans were not on the agenda, which, thanks to a strong collective presence of community from all different types of people, the oceans did get their say at COP21 in Paris. Like I said, originally it really wasn't on the agenda at all, but so many people from different walks of life and from different parts of the world spoke up saying, hey, it's kind of crazy that the ocean isn't on the agenda in any capacity. Like, we want to see it being spoken about. For example, Pharrell is a big ocean advocate. He just won an award from a UK ocean collective for his fight against single-use plastics. So you have everyone from celebrities to scientists, to citizens, to students like us, kind of saying it's time that you give the ocean its say. So that was a huge, huge win. As all my friends have loved to send me, Adidas is creating a shoe made entirely of plastic ocean trash. It's set to release, I believe, either this year, 2016, or 2017, but it's taking trash from the ocean and using 3D print technology to turn it into a shoe. And when this was announced, I am not even joking when I say upwards of 30 people sent me the link because they knew I was so passionate about the ocean, and this is one way to kind of clean up the ocean and get something from it. So not only is it cleaning the ocean, but it's reusing plastics essentially, which fits right in with our big sustainability theme. I'm going to post the link to the shoe on our Facebook page. But one of the main plastics that they use in it is the illegal gill nets that are collected by the nonprofit Sea Shepherd. So it's a difficult plastic to work with, but these gill nets are illegal. They're mostly used for large-scale fishing operations, such as the giant nets that pick up a lot of stuff, including bycatch, which, in case anyone doesn't know, are species that are caught and essentially discarded as trash because there's no monetary value. These could be sea cucumbers, shells with species in them, sometimes conch, and it's pretty much just trash to them. So these animals die without being sold or anything. So it's going to be starting as a limited release shoe, and I'm so excited. So that happened in 2015. Another big win was microbeads. Admittedly, I love microbeads in my face products. I really can feel the clean, but they are estimating that there are, and this is the lowest limit, at least 15 trillion pieces of these tiny plastics in our oceans, which is 3 times originally thought. Because they're so small, they end up in creatures. So they are consumed in their bellies and even in the gills, which causes all sorts of problems. But the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives have passed bills that will ban the use of microbeads. And they're coming out every day with new non-plastic, non-toxic ways to exfoliate. For example, I switched over to St. Ives because they use like crushed walnut shells, and it feels just as good and I feel just as clean without kind of harming the environment. And not only are they in face scrubs, by the way, they're also in toothpaste, which I didn't know. And I just can't imagine like brushing my teeth and having little bits of plastic all up in there. So that was a huge win. And the last big win that I want to talk about for 2015 are the oil companies are looking towards giving up drilling in the Arctic, which is just out of this world good. Most popular are the rise of kayaktivists, which is a combination of the word kayak and activist. These activists got into kayaks and formed barriers to oil drilling equipment in Portland and Seattle to stop them from getting over to the Arctic and Alaska. Although the fight isn't over, Obama has put a 2-year ban on drilling in Alaska, and the hashtag #ShellNo became trending worldwide through Greenpeace and protests with People versus Shell, which is the oil company. The fact that there is a 2-year ban on drilling, while good, is also, to some people, not sufficient enough. He could have hypothetically done 5 years or 10 years or 20 years until we kind of look towards the future and see what can we move away from oil. But it's a start, and that's what we like to see. So 2015 has been a huge year for the ocean. Like I said, everything from banning microbeads to putting a stop to oil drilling. Even small island states are getting their voices. There was COP21 in Paris, which were the climate talks. There was the One Ocean Conference. Greenpeace held conferences worldwide. Ocean Unite, which is a new philanthropy. All of these are just happened in the year 2015. There will be even more good coming in 2016. So I was very excited for that. And towards the end of 2015, so it was pretty much 2016, the first documented wild spawning of Atlantic salmon was found in Connecticut. And the last time that they saw this fish spawn there was the late 1700s. So it has been near like 300 years since they laid their eggs in this area. This is an amazing news because the restoration program that was affecting the area actually ended 2 years ago. So it means that they are seeing these long-lasting effects in Connecticut. So hopefully, hopefully we continue to see these wild spawnings of this salmon. And we're actually going to be talking about salmon later on, but not the wild one that you're thinking of. We're going to be talking about this lovely frankenfish that also was approved for FDA use in 2015. I'm also going to take this moment. Let me pull it up. Boop, boop, share screen. Share screen. Okay, apparently I can't pull it up. Hold on. Okay, well, that's fine. So today we are also launching a contest. It's called the See the World, and to get the joke, look in the group chat. Ah ha ha, see the world. Ah ha ha. What it is we are asking you guys to send in photos either through an email or Facebook. You can do it over Twitter or Instagram of photos that you have taken of either you're at the beach, the ocean, maybe you went to a lake. But our whole thing is we want to see what you see. Because I know personally, I live near the Atlantic Ocean, and for a really long time, that's the only ocean I ever associated with existing. Obviously, that's not true. And with a lot of kind of new year, new travels, we want to show people that there are so many different versions of the oceans and of lakes. So we're asking that you submit them, and every week, 2 photos will be chosen to be featured on all of our social media and our website. And as a thank you, you will be sent a 10 by 2020 mug. The main thing is it does have to be your photo, so you can't kind of go onto Google and type in really cool ocean photos and grab whichever one you see, because we are reproducing it with your explicit permission. So that is going to run for a month, so it will end on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So if you're really interested, that would be a great Valentine's Day gift for your significant other, a cool 10 by 2020 mug. And of course, that will be shipped to you and at no cost. So submit the photos, please. And it will be beautiful, and I cannot wait to see what everyone else sees. I think now I'm going to turn it over to either Jonathan and or Kevin to do a quick presentation on grants. I don't know if we can hear you guys. Hello?
Hi there.
Hello? Kevin, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Cool.
Okay. Let's do it that way. Okay. I can go first if you want, or it doesn't matter. John wants to get. Oh, yeah.
However you.
Okay, sure. So my name is Kevin Lindell. I'm a fellow at the Boston Hemp Center for MCN, and this year we've talked a lot about different things that can be helpful for a leader in small organizations that can help out with whatever projects they're trying to work on. Specifically, I'm going to talk about one thing we learned recently is about the skills of grant writing and how that can be helpful when you're trying to get funding for a particular project you're working on. All right, so here's a couple things I've come up with. So first and foremost, if you're proposing a grant for any kind of project, it seems kind of stupid, but follow the directions. So know what the specifications of a particular grant are, what they're looking for, how long does it have to be, what are the limitations. know what questions are answering, and really describe to them what you're trying to accomplish. That being said, you also want to be succinct with your answers. So describe the project you're trying to do for your particular organization. Describe the impact it'll have on the community or the ecosystem you're trying to improve. Answer the questions that are set out in the grant, but don't be too wordy, I guess is what I'm getting at. Next one of the most important is to understand the mission or the goals of the funding agency that you're targeting with your grant proposal. So it's one of the biggest things that grant reviewers say is a problem with people who are getting proposals, is that they're not addressing the goals of your organization or your project aren't necessarily in lines with the agency's goals at the time, or that might have limitations in that way. Just make sure that in your proposal, you're showing them that you understand their organization, you need funding from them, and how it's going to help with your organization that you're trying to do. Another important one is measurable outcomes. So when you're proposing this grant, you have to be able to say how it's going to affect, say we're doing something with sustainable seas, how are we going to clean up the oceans? How is that going to improve? You can say, yes, this is going to improve the ecosystem, but how? You have to have, be able to quantitatively say how this is going to affect this certain area. So how many people, how many animals, or what specific area is being affected, and how is that? Basically any way to quantify your results that you're expecting from your project that you're putting forward, and not just saying, yes, it will improve it. How is it going to improve it? Building off of that, you have to present an evaluation plan with your proposal to say, how are we going to determine if our positive impact on the community or the ecosystem that we're trying to improve. So make it very clear, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to see that it has actually worked the way we want it to. And lastly, one major thing that after, if you've been accepted for your grant, you've implemented your project successfully, it's very good to keep in contact with the organization that you've talked to, the fundraising, the agency that you've requested this grant from. You have to show them, present them how well the project actually worked, is what I'm trying to say. If your project was successful, let them know. It gains credibility for your organization and possibly opens you up for future grants or partnerships with this organization. So yeah, hopefully I've been able to say that clearly. Probably not, but yeah, that's what I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As someone who has applied for many grants and have gotten and also not received the grants, it is a stressful experience. I think that my best advice on that is to also have someone read over it, especially someone who has zero idea what you are talking about. For example, I had written a grant this past semester, and I actually had my roommate read it for me because I was trying to explain this very specific concept, and she read it and said, I have no idea what you're talking about unless the person knows all of these acronyms and knows this science and this history. It's going to go over everyone's head. So I went back with my friends and we ended up rewriting it in kind of this distilled way, and we did receive the grant. But if I had sent it in just like that, I don't know if anyone would have understood what we were talking about. So grant writing is a very important skill to have, but it's also a terrifying one. Thank you so much for talking about that with us. So, all right. I wanted to talk about, since this whole theme is sustainable seas, just a couple of days ago, let me see when, actually 3 days ago, the Benchley Ocean Award winners were announced. And it's all different categories, but the one that I really wanted to talk about was the Youth Award. And it went to this 21-year-old named Daniela Fernandez, who's a junior at Georgetown University and is majoring in government. And she started the Georgetown Sustainable Oceans Alliance. But more so than that, she got a chance to visit the United Nations in 2013, which is when she first learned about the ocean's fish and the fisheries crisis. And she started the first chapter of Sustainable Oceans Alliance, the Georgetown chapter, and she wanted to educate and empower the Georgetown community and millennials to do something about ocean sustainability within their careers. She launched the Sustainable Ocean Summit, which had more than 30 colleges and universities participating, and they covered topics of government, science, business, policy, all with the oceans as a focus. A document, and it was signed by, I truly don't remember how many people. I believe it was over 30,000 people, and she presented it to Ban Ki-moon, who is the one of the overseers for the United Nations, and she presented it to him as proof that this is something that students and millennials truly do care about. I actually got to see the document over my summer, and to see this just giant long list of people's names pretty much pledging that this is something that they care about and that they are invested in. It's one of the things that inspired me to do what I'm doing right now, to have 10 by 2020. So the fact that she received the Christopher Benchley Youth Award is amazing for all her work that she did do and is continuing to do. So I thought that was pretty awesome. Let's see, I want to keep an eye on the time. Cool. So with the good does come the bad. I'm a firm believer in telling the good with the bad regardless. So a study done in 2015, but was released just technically today, because it was released in Australia. Marine protected areas around the world do not support corals and fish as we hoped. So it was a study into marine parks conducted by an international team of researchers, and they found that the protected areas we have set up were not adequately corals and fish, which means that they expect to see a certain amount of diversity in these areas. And unfortunately, the areas did not have the diversity that they thought. They actually did expect the diversity to be less, but not as bad as they actually were. Now, the reason for this isn't that marine protected areas don't work. It's the sheer fact that we might not be placing them in the smartest areas. We put them where humans want them, not necessarily where they are needed. So to address this, it would be time to put future marine protected areas in the right places. We need to put the protection in key areas. This means maybe a part of the coral reef that isn't as healthy as another part, but it can gain that health back through being protected, through being in a reserve. Or it could be an area where at one time fish used to spawn, but don't anymore. But if we protect them, they might come back. We heard about the Atlantic salmon that are spawning in an area that they haven't done since the Revolutionary War, so we know it's possible. unfortunately, like I said, it means that it isn't supporting the corals and fish as we want, but we still have 14 years to do better until the Sustainable Development Goal is done. And even then, I'm sure we'll continue to be making these protected areas. So, the good and the bad. Let's see. Another good and bad that I would love to open up to discussion is, I'm sure we all read it in the papers, 2015 saw the approval by the Food and Drug Administration of genetically modified salmon. This would be the first GMO organism to be allowed on the market, and it does not have to be labeled. This is scary sounding, but I think people are going to find it's not as bad as it seems. So I have a little video. Boom. Share screen. Boom.
Move over, wild and farmed salmon. A genetically engineered cousin is a step closer to the market. Long touted as safe by AquaBounty, the company that has been swimming upstream seeking regulatory approval for about 20 years.
The risk is as minimal as you could ever expect to get with any product.
Now, the Food and Drug Administration in the U.S. agrees, ruling there is no meaningful differences between the engineered salmon and its conventional counterpart. From a landlocked lab on PEI, the eggs injected with a gene from an eel called an ocean pout and one from a Chinook salmon are flown to tanks in Panama to be grown to market size. Now, with this ruling, they are cleared for sale in the United States without any labeling required. These genetically modified fish can grow to market size twice as fast as farmed fish, costing a lot less to feed. But opponents say this ruling is based on poor science.
There was actually an increased risk of allergy, an increased allergenic potential, but that was based on a sample size of 6 fish, which is too small.
And our concern is that these GM salmon can escape and can reproduce with wild Atlantic salmon, causing genetic contamination.
Even those in the salmon farming business in Canada are distancing themselves from what critics are calling frankenfish.
When genetically modified fish are deemed safe by all of the regulatory bodies, and as well until the market demands it, and that's really a key factor, we're not going to be pursuing it.
The company has applied for approval to market the salmon to consumers in this country, and Health Canada says it will consider it carefully. But even opponents here say it's quite likely the regulator will follow the lead of its American counterpart. Tom Murphy, CBC News, Halifax.
Stop share. So that was just a short video about the GMO salmon. Obviously, it didn't go into great detail, as if you were to go, let's say, onto the Aqua Advantage, it's called, website. But I personally have some really mixed feelings about this GMO salmon, because once again, personally, I see GMOs as a necessary evil in our lives, kind of the double-edged sword, I would say. But I don't know if putting it into salmon, into an organism, is pushing the lines, is too much. But Aqua Advantage salmon is said to be the most sustainable fish because we are in a fisheries crisis, and they're raising essentially an antibiotic-free, disease-free salmon that is away from the ocean, which minimizes the risk of impacting native fish and minimize the risk of exposing it to pollutants or contaminants that already harm the marine ecosystem. It's the setup that they do grow them in itself is very sustainable, using a lot less waste. And fish is healthy for people to eat, and it needs less feed than most fish that are grown through aquaculture, and even less than chickens, pigs, cows. So it's difficult. Does anyone have any opinions on this frankenfish?
Okay, I'll step in real quick. Hey guys, my name is Jonathan. Can anybody hear me first?
Yeah.
Just want to double check. Okay. My name is Jonathan Francisca, and I am representing the 10 by 2020 global campaign at the fellowship program. And I'm also a bio major, and the sciences is basically what I kind of live for. And one of my professors actually gave a lecture about this about a year ago. And one of the things that he kept mentioning is the fact that GMOs on themselves are not bad. It's just, first of all, it would also really depend on where and how it's being produced as well, because I mean, GMO is, it's still a very broad subject. Regarding to these frankenfish that are, I inherently don't really have a problem with them. It's just as also one of the scientists or one of the ecological advocates said in the video that Emily just showed us, is the fact that if these genetically modified fish do or are able to escape and come in contact with the same type of species that is not genetically modified, they could eventually end up procreating, and this would eventually be something very bad if all the natural salmon we have would slowly start to deplete and they'd be replaced by genetically modified salmon. I mean, that is my worst fear that I have. Again, in general, I don't have a problem with these fish. I mean, hey, if they're healthy, the fish, hey, go ahead, eat as much as you want. But the fact that there is a risk of them escaping captivity and mixing and then reproducing with the ones that are not genetically modified, that is something that I am very, very against. So yeah.
No, I definitely agree. And that too is one of my biggest fears, is that we will have some almost cross-contamination, and we might see the depletion of truly wild salmon. I think it also goes back to the idea with GMOs and different types of vegetables is, are we losing, like, I know tomatoes, are we losing these heirloom style tomatoes because we're trying to produce perfectly red, round, luscious, looks like it could be in a magazine or like a McDonald's ad tomatoes, but is that what makes it real? Is this imperfection? And there's also this debate of, we have so much of the world starving and so many people rely on fish, but will they have access to this fish? Like right now, it's okay, being kind of grown or like harvested. It's harvested in Panama. It's grown at Prince Edward Island, and then it's only meant for the United States right now. And part of the reason is right now 95% of the farm salmon that's served in the United States is imported. So AquaBounty is trying to take back this kind of industry. So they're saying, well, it's USA made, which everyone looks for. But what will happen if we stop taking that farm salmon that we import? What will happen to that economy? So it's like for every good thing, there's a bad thing, and it weighs out perfectly. Does anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll say something. So hi guys, my name's Tara. I'm representing myself. I go to Stony Brook University. I'm a chemistry major. I just care about environmental issues. Um, so I've done not a lot of research on GMO stuff, but my friend was an English major, and I know that she had like written a paper about it. So from what I understand and read, I think that, as we all know, like the ecology of or an ecosystem is very fragile. If any of the GMO fish were to get out, then I think inevitably that it would be a huge problem. And without some very sound way to make sure that that wouldn't happen, I feel like inevitably it will, just because things happen, things slip up, especially when things aren't completely regulated. I also think that when you're not labeling GMOs in general, because of where you're getting those DNA from, people can and will have allergic reactions to things that they would not normally have allergic reactions to. I think it was an upward of like 1,000 deaths had happened in the past. I think it was a study that happened 2 years ago because they were eating things that had, like, it was specifically tomatoes that had fish DNA stranded into them to make them bigger, and they were allergic to fish, so they had like passed away or like had some like severe allergic reaction as a result of eating a tomato, even though it was really the fish aspect of it that they were having a problem with. So I feel like the labeling aspect alone is a huge controversial problem. And then of course you have the idea of sustainability, and you know, like we're talking about how like we're seeing it as we need more fish, or we need more of something, and how can we produce it in a cheap way with the amount of land that we have to supply it to all the people that we have. I'm really big into like the zero waste movement and the minimalist movement. So for me, I've learned to get very frustrated, I guess, with this type of mentality, because it just seems very backwards to me at this point. And that is that instead we're going to these extreme measures in order to create more of something, and instead of thinking that, hey, maybe we need to be using less. So I think that that's something that is not really considered, especially like when we're talking about any sustainability issues, but is definitely something that I feel like needs to be talked about more. That's it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Not labeling, I think, is one of the kind of worst ideas that the FDA did approve, because like you said, it could be a health risk to kind of this whole right to know. Companies are kind of fighting back against this Frankenfish, as it's being called. For example, America's largest seller of salmon, which is Costco, has already said that they are not going to sell it because they kind of consider it unsafe and bad for business. Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Target, Giant Eagle, a lot of little shops and local supermarkets are saying that they are not going to sell it. And even though the FDA swears that there are, and I'm going to direct quote the FDA here, no biologically relevant differences in the nutritional profile, that sentence, okay, in the nutritional profile, but you're literally changing its genetics. So you have to worry about things like epigenetics, and you have to worry about cross-contamination. So while it's not biologically relevant in taste, it might still taste the same, doesn't mean that it's not biologically relevant on a genomic scale. So we'll see. It should be interesting to see kind of what places accept it. Red Lobster, which is the nation's largest seafood chain, has already said that it will pass on selling this GMO salmon. So it might seem like a good idea now, but until maybe more research or more people kind of agree on consuming it or trying it, I don't know where it'll go, if anywhere. So, does anyone else want to weigh in on the Frankenfish debacle? Looking, seeing if anyone's unmuting themselves. Yes.
Honestly, I don't have anything to offer. I just have a question. Is there any group of people that are voicing the most concern? For example, is it like mothers, or is it scientists, or like environmental activists?
Definitely environmental activists. In my opinion, probably the loudest group is Food and Water Watch. GMOs are one of their big hot topics. I've done a lot with them, especially concerning Monsanto and GMOs, but they have held several different protests about this Frankenfish and are definitely one of the stronger oppositions to the FDA approving it. Everything from kind of trying to persuade other groups. So they had several First Nations groups talk about why they disapprove of this genetically engineered salmon, to local groups. They got together with the Center for Food Safety, a lot of different organizations. So I would definitely put them as one of the most adamantly against the Frankenfish. The FDA did still approve it, so I don't know how useful that was. Another big, hold on, I want to make sure I get their name right. Let's see. Hold on, I want to make sure that they get. Oh, I guess they don't have. So a lot of anti-GMO activists. So it's not necessarily all scientists or all environmentalists, but a lot of anti-GMO. Although some scientists have definitely been outspoken on how they feel about the Frankenfish. For example, the director of the Institute of Health and the Environment at the University of Albany, his biggest concern is what will happen to the wild salmon populations if the Frankenfish escape. So he's concerned about that. Other people are concerned about the balance of the aquatic ecosystem. So I know that there was a rally in New York City with GMO Free NY, which is a local group against GMOs, and they wanted to protest against this Frankenfish. So, but at the same time, with the protesters, there's also supporters. They say supporters kind of point out that this fast-growing fish can alleviate world hunger, can stop this overfishing and illegal and unreported and unregulated fishing. It can kind of provide for consumers in an environmentally responsible manner. So it seems to be pretty split. Between all that. Oh. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. We are just ready for you. Perfect timing.
Great.
All right. Let me pull up my thing. Okay. So, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Guy Dean. I'm the Vice President and CSO of Albion Fisheries in Vancouver, Canada. A little bit about my background. CSO is Chief Sustainability Officer. It's a relatively unique job profile for the seafood industry and rather specific for the seafood industry. And we're focused on the product we source as well as our impact, environmental impact within the businesses that we run.
Did you always want to go into fisheries and sustainable seafood, or did this kind of take you by surprise?
No, I actually have a degree in marine zoology, and and when I was much younger, I decided to travel around the world, and I ended up back in Japan. And I spent 7 years in Japan as a commercial diver. And at the time when I decided that it was time to return back to Canada, I decided I wanted to utilize my knowledge of Japanese and continue with something along the lines of seafood and the seafood industry. And I ended up, because of that, getting into sales. And ended up being in sales for a primary processor and direct harvester for quite a long time. And then that just morphed into the roles that I have now.
Awesome. So the theme of this forum for the new year is sustainable seas. And we've kind of talked a lot about sustainability, but that is one of those words that has kind of a different meaning to everyone. So what does sustainability mean to you, and what does it mean for your company? Sure.
I mean, I have the luxury of establishing what sustainability means for my company. So really, when I say what it means for me and what it means for my company, it's one and the same. From our perspective, we have a relatively unique perspective of what sustainability is for us. Part of that, it has morphed over the period of the last 12 years. We've really changed and slowly seen a sustainability movement change within the industry over the last 10 years, and hopefully will continue to evolve. It's kind of a living definition, so to speak. But from our perspective, sustainability, it has three key pillars and three components. A lot of people associate sustainability with preservation of resource or conservation of resource and the environment. And while that's important, we also believe sustainability, the other two pillars for sustainability are the social components and socioeconomics of sustainability, as well as the economics. So social, economics, and environment. And in reality, if you don't make good, conscious business decisions, you're not going to have a sustainable business model. If you're not looking after the people that you both support and that work for you, you're not going to have a sustainable model. And if you're not going to look after the resource that you use for your business, then you're not going to have a positive model. So you really need all three of those pillars. And it's really like a house. If you take one of those pillars away, your house is going to topple.
Oh, no, I definitely agree with that. So Albion has an operation that is called Closer to the Source. Can you tell us how that came to be and what that is?
Yeah, from Albion's perspective, we wanted to ensure that the products that we were sourcing met our expectations, that we knew they were completely traceable and we knew where our product came from. And for that reason, we moved away from being just a typical seafood wholesaler distributor into a primary processor as well as direct importer. So Closer to the Source is basically the import arm of it really is two components. One, the import arm of our business, and the second component the import arm of our business, where we buy container loads of product from all over the world, and we're dealing direct with the farms or the packers, processors of the product. And then the second one is where we're buying direct from fishers and harvesters all along the Pacific coast.
Cool. Do you find that when you're working with these working directly with these fishermen, do you find a higher rate of transparency?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, we have a model program in place called This Fish, where we are actually, during the season, our fishermen will actually tag each individual fish and log on to into the This Fish site. They'll upload the information about their catch with the tagged fish information, and so that anybody can actually, that buys this product, if a restaurant or a retailer who actually buys the product can take the code that they get on the tagged fish, they can go into the system, the This Fish website, type in the code, and it'll tell you everything about that fish at the time of caught. I mean, we've got some fishers that are really engaged in the process and are relatively computer literate, that will actually go in and they'll blog on, about how the fishing was on that particular fishing trip, and maybe upload some pictures, and that's kind of cool. But for the most part, most of the fishers just, they just give the information of where they were fishing, what the boat name is, when it was caught, those kind of things.
That is so cool. That's just such a wealth of information, and really kind of protects against this illegal and unregulated and unreported fishing. That's such a crisis nowadays.
It is.
I also know that Albion works with a lot of great organizations, such as Sea Choice and Oceanwise. Can you talk a bit about each of these organizations and what they do and kind of what you do with them? Sure.
Well, we work with a number of NGOs throughout North America. Albion, part of obviously the reason that I'm talking with you today is Albion is, committed to being a leader with regards to seafood sustainability within the industry. Hopefully by our actions, we influence others to participate and take an active role. So we work with a whole bunch of NGOs across North America, not just in Canada, but the two specific that you just talked about was Oceanwise. This is a Vancouver Aquarium program that is that basically works primarily with restaurant chains, and has basically gone and audited various fishery products and have said whether they meet sustainability criteria or not. And then they partner with these restaurants and say that if you sell some of the fish products on your menu, then you can actually use the Oceanwise logo on the menu to show that that product is a sustainably caught or sustainably harvested product. So because of that, it's really pushed awareness to the consumer, especially at the restaurant level, on what products are good Oceanwise choices that they can make. Sea Choice works primarily with retailers up here in Canada and retail partners, and they're very similar to the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch program that has the green, yellow, red kind of stoplight colors, basically endorsing whether the product is great or is good, a good alternative, or avoid. And so they work on the exact same assessment criteria, and it's the exact same similar process up here in Canada. So the retailers will actually label the product in the counter, whether it's green, yellow, best choice, green, good alternative, or red, yellow, good alternative, or red, avoid. And so it gives the consumer purchasing power on the decisions that they make.
That's such a good idea. I know that even I have trouble kind of trying to make smart choices, and the idea of labeling it something that universally good, sort of good, and bad is an amazingly smart move.
Yeah, it's an important move, and it helps stimulate the it helped educate the consumer of what are good decisions that could be made. In reality, there's questions being raised. Is it just simply providing market access then for yellow rank product? And is it really pushing the needle forward on trying to create active change within the industry? The problem is, the yellow is pretty ambiguous, and the consumer really, the consumer doesn't know it's kind of like when you're driving. There are some drivers that they see yellow and they speed up, and then there's others that see yellow and they're very cautious and they slow down. And so it seems to work the same with the consumers. There's a lot of consumers that are somewhat confused with that yellow ranking, and so we'd like to see certainly it strengthen and there be really even stronger criteria there, that yellow is really only a middle ground as a stepping stone in order for them to achieve green and try to push the movement forward.
I never thought of it that way. That's actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that they should get rid of this yellow labeling at all and just kind of make that distinct line? This fish is green, this fish is red? Or do you think that consumers need that stepping stone middle ground?
I don't think consumers necessarily need the stepping stone, but I think retailers do. The problem is that through corporate social responsibility statements made by many retailers like Walmart, for example, that says by 2015 we're not going to carry red listed items and we're only going to carry certified or ranked product. The challenge is those products aren't available. You can set pretty lofty goals, but when the supply is not there or the resource is not there to only offer sustainable products, it makes it extremely difficult for them. So the yellow kind of answers those concerns. It's product that's in the process, it's sustainable, it's endorsed by most of the NGOs as being a better choice than avoid. And it helps answer some of their concerns about corporate social responsibility, but I also believe it adds confusion to the consumer. So one of the things that I really liked about Oceanwise is that Oceanwise, even though that I would challenge that they need to improve as well, Oceanwise is very black and white. Oceanwise says, if it's got the logo on it and it's on your menu, then you can feel comfortable about it. It's really very clear, so that there's no middle zone. There's no, well, should I eat it or shouldn't I eat it? And so it makes it a very easy decision for the consumer. And I think that's what we really have to do if we really want to get more consumers engaged.
Yeah. Going to kind of red listing. In 2005, Albion decided to discontinue the sales of Chilean sea bass. Can you tell us why Albion chose to do this?
Yeah, at the time, we believe it was the right move to make. In fact, over the course of did 6 different species groups in excess of $1.2 million of sales. And so it was a lot of money to walk away from, but we really felt that because of the overwhelming evidence of overfishing or pirate fishing, that we really had to take a stand. We believe by delisting those products and not selling them, it sent a very clear message to the industry that we needed to see change. The reality is, and again, I support what we did at the time. I think it was the right decision because we hadn't evolved enough. But the reality is we stopped selling the product, but our competitors didn't. And so we really didn't see a noticeable change within the industry. Our customers that were buying that product before simply went to our competitors that were not worried about selling an unsustainable product. Since that time, the industry has evolved, and the industry now seems to be more focused on continuous improvement. And what I mean by that is, the goal is if you set clear, credible metrics in place with timelines and expected timelines, expected results, and you say to a fishery, we want to see you improve, we will continue to support you in that endeavor. And we want to see you meet certain criteria or meet certain timelines in your change process, then we will continue to support you. And then we have some leverage point by continuing to support a fishing group or aquaculture organization or group sustainable, we have more leverage points than actually just walking away from those projects.
Yeah. So while I was perusing the website, I also saw that your company works with Climate Smart. Can you tell us a bit about that program and what changes Albion has made?
Yeah, well, Albion is, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we're not just focused on offering sustainable seafood. We care about, obviously, our employees' social benefits. But we're also involved in, we also care about our environmental impact within our organization. And so we have an extensive recycling program outside of the typical things that you would see with an operation like recycling, like energy efficient lights and windows and all of those things. We started to track our carbon footprint, and we did that. We were the first seafood distributor in all of Canada to track our carbon footprint and set clear, credible measurements in place and set some goals for continuous improvement year over year, which we try to publish annually. We haven't finished our 2015 Climate Smart review, so there's nothing available at this point in time, but that's our ultimate goal. And that's what Climate Smart is. It's a tool for us to actually measure and report out our carbon footprint.
That's such a good idea. I really wish that I could apply Climate Smart to everything, to my school, to my house, to myself personally, because I know that I'm always trying to decrease my carbon footprint. So many of our delegates are avid seafood eaters, but my friends kind of know me as the guilt tripper when it comes to seafood, especially shrimp. I'm always yelling at them if they try to eat shrimp, so I know it's so unsustainable. But how can we, as consumers, make smarter choices when purchasing seafood?
Well, again, I would rely, and it's important to note, I mean, I think it's the same reason when we talked about Oceanwise and Sea Choice earlier. I mean, I've got a degree in marine zoology, but I'm not about to tell individuals what I believe is sustainable or not sustainable. I want to rely on the experts, the NGO community that have put the resources behind the research to tell me or whether that product is either ranked or certified sustainable. And so I would also rely on those NGOs and the distributors, retailers that work with those NGOs that are actually promoting and labeling all the product on whether it's sustainable or not. I think that's a really important component. And then when you find those types of retailers or restaurant chains, we need to support them in that endeavor. The reality is there are commodity type items that aren't really controlled by price. The pricing is pretty standard throughout, and so whether it's sustainable or not, the pricing is fairly similar. But there are a lot of sustainably ranked products that are more expensive, and so it makes it harder for a retailer or consumer to make those decisions because the product is more expensive. But I would just ask that you search out for those. We have to support those types of retailers, those types of restaurant chains that are trying to make the difference.
I have a local fish shop in the town next door to mine, and they try to only sell fish that has been sustainably harvested. And we really have been encouraging people from our community to go there rather than to go to a large retailer that might not have that commitment. So
Go ahead, sorry.
It's okay. One topic that really comes up a lot in our conversations is this idea that we're in this fisheries crisis, that scientists predict by the year 2048 we will be out of fish, and that it might be the downfall of our society. How can fishermen and companies continue to provide seafood without adding to this crisis? Is it possible?
I think it's very possible. I think there are two things. We need to support aquaculture. I mean, for the longest time, a lot of people associate aquaculture as being, a dirty word, and it's not. Reality is seafood consumption continues to increase on an annualized basis throughout the world. We're not going to have enough fish, especially wild-caught fish, available unless to feed everybody, unless we start to rely on aquaculture as well. And there is responsibly sourced and harvested aquaculture within the world. And so it would just to be to support those projects. I'm not saying aquaculture is perfect. There are a lot of unsustainable aquaculture projects and unresponsible aquaculture projects out there in the world. But if we support those responsible ones, I think it's really important. The second thing to make note of is with regards to wild-caught stocks and fisheries is how do we implement change and get the industry on board? Within North America, most of our issues with regards to sustainability aren't in developed countries like Canada, US, or the UK. Most of our issues really are in underdeveloped or third world countries where their unsustainable fishing practices are causing the demise of those fisheries. And it's really, but the reality is they're trying to feed their family. And so we need to approach these fisheries in these underdeveloped countries and find a way to engage with them to make positive change. For the longest time, we've gone to them and said, you need to fish this way because some NGO or some retailer in Canada or the US wants to get a green ranking on that product for their fish counters. And the reality is it's not going to change. That's not an impetus for these small communities to change. But if we went to those communities and we said, if you fish a certain way, which happens to be more sustainable, we can build churches for your community, we can build schools, we can create long-term jobs for your family, for your community, for your friends. That's the way, and that's the social benefits that we talked about with regards to sustainability. That's the way we're going to create impactful change. So I don't believe that by 2050 we're going to have the demise of the industry. I think a lot more positive about that, and I've seen the changes happening. And in fact, that same report that was produced has come out now and saying, well, our numbers aren't necessarily all there supporting, and we've seen some positive progress in this initiative. So, as I said, I mean, we just need to find a way to engage with those areas that are a major concern, and they're primarily in underdeveloped and third world countries. How do we influence change with them, and also to support good and responsible aquaculture projects?
Thank you so much. I'm going to open up questions from any of our participants. If you want to either unmute yourself, you can say them, or if you want, you can send it to me in the message and I can say it. So have your pick, everyone. Okay, while they're thinking, I actually, okay, that was me. I actually have a question for you that kind of just popped into my head. I know that I live on a campus, and so all of our food is actually provided by a giant conglomerate company, and my school does serve fish sometimes. If I wanted to see where the fish came from this company, how do you think I could go about that?
You know, the reality is there's a lot of those large groups that are extremely focused on sustainability issues. Groups like Sodexo that are really engaged in the products that they source. But the only way you can really know where your product comes from is by, you know, engaging with the chefs, with the commissaries, asking them, can I have some more information about the seafood that you're supplying? And we've seen this with the universities that within our local to us, and they're very, very engaged and have demanded changes within the sourcing practices by the universities. And we've seen real positive changes because of it.
That makes me feel a lot better because my school actually gets its food from Sodexo. It was a brand new changeover. And I remember talking with my friends who are part of the environmental club and the marine science club that we really wanted to find out where this food was coming from. So knowing that they might have a more sustainable practice than what I think we really kind of give to them, because to be honest, we all kind of have our complaints about campus food, but knowing that the food might be coming from somewhere a bit better definitely puts me at ease some. So does anyone have a question? Julene, yeah.
Yes. First of all, thank you for joining. I know you're extremely busy. A lot of this information that we get about like companies and their environmental action comes from the media. So it's really nice to hear directly from someone who is working on these projects. So my question is, when you do foresee a short-term loss in profits, for example, when you stopped distributing sea bass, how do you justify this decision to like investors or stakeholders, aside from using the usual language of like, you know, think about the future, or we need to sustain these stocks? Is there something that stakeholders are more receptive to hearing when you make these kinds of difficult decisions?
It's a fantastic question because, again, it comes back to the three pillars about sustainability, and one of them is economics. But there's got to be a clear return on investment and a clear ROI on the decisions that you make, and so it has to be proven out. And it was our belief that we could find alternatives to the products that we've delisted, and really promote to the consumers, to the retailers, to the restaurants, these alternatives as being better options. It didn't come to fruition right away. It took quite a bit of time to convince the restaurants and the retailers to switch over. And in many cases, because they've got their menu printed, you know, you're not going to see a change because their menus are usually seasonal. You don't really see a change for at least 3 to 6 months. So we had to write it out for 3 to 6 months. But we had to prove out that we thought we had better options, more sustainable options, and the consumers were still going to buy into that. That was really what we a bit of it was rolling the dice and hoping that our strategy was sound and that we would get the support of those, and we did. And, you know, a lot of the restaurants, in fact, restaurants that hadn't bought from us before, came over and started buying from us because of the statements that we made. Good question, though.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Julene. Any other questions?
Sure. I just have kind of a curiosity question. What are some of, or one of the more popular seafood or fish options for consumers that is like more at risk or to unsustainable fishing practices that maybe we wouldn't think of as being at risk in these ways? If that makes sense.
Sorry. So let me make sure I understand what you're saying, Kevin. So are you just talking about what are some of the big seafood items that maybe we're not necessarily aware of the risk factors associated with them?
Right. Yeah.
Well, obviously, Emily touched on it earlier. I mean, prawns, a lot of people think that prawns are still wild caught. For the most part, there are some wild fisheries about prawns, but prawns, for the most part, are farmed in Southeast Asia. And in order to grow these prawns, they're typically grown in ponds. And and they've either deforested the area. We've heard about mangrove deforestation. They've either deforested the area, or if the pond it was a river system that they've just diverted the water to. They've flooded specific areas, farm areas to make it happen. And so there's some environmental destruction that's occurring there. But the biggest issue is on farm product is the heavy use of antibiotics and pesticides in order to help them grow. The reality is, as a farmer, you're focused on animal husbandry, and you want to make sure that you try to keep your stock alive until you bring it to harvest. And not a lot of people really take that into consideration. So there are some recognized health concerns with heavy antibiotic use in some farm product. And that would translate all the way through. That's why I mentioned that there is responsible aquaculture projects out there, but there is, some relatively unsustainable practices that are being done. And I know the industry as a whole is focused on trying to improve those, but, there are not just prawns, farmed Atlantic salmon in certain regions of the world is another area of concern. Heavy antibiotic use. So it's things like that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Tara.
So we were talking earlier about the idea, that like GMO salmon specifically is like starting to potentially get passed and is able to be sold in the United States. I wanted to know what you thought about that. Specifically, we were talking about the idea of what would happen if any of the salmon escaped captivity.
That's a great question. I mean, from Albion's perspective, we've taken a stance against genetically modified, against selling genetically modified salmon. That's not necessarily that we're against genetic modification, but there is a place and a area that you would use it, and we believe that in the case of salmon, especially farm salmon, it's not a necessity. There are other ways to grow salmon. The reason it's raising such a level of interest is you're able to grow salmon in the same time period, but to be 3 times larger than it would take another salmonoid that's not genetically modified. And because of that, a lot of people are very interested in that. But the reality is there hasn't been enough research done and long-term tests done over the course of time to support this is a health risk to the consumer or not. And so for that reason, we've chosen not to sell genetically modified salmon at this point in time.
Any other questions? Everyone had such good questions. I'm so excited. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us. It's been a wealth of information, and I think it really has gotten us to think more about where we're getting our seafood and kind of how to be better consumers, and how kind of this behind the scenes look of sustainability from a seafood and from a business perspective. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Have a good afternoon. Time difference.
Yeah. Bye.
Awesome, guys. That was so cool. Yas. So, going off of this idea of sustainable seafood, I wanted to talk about this really awesome restaurant that my friend told me about not too long ago. It's called Seymour's, and it's in New York City. And the entire restaurant is a seafood restaurant, but they only use sustainable seafood. And they are known for using kind of the foods that you aren't normally going to see on the menu. So they're foods that maybe aren't popular or are kind of considered throwaway foods. They partner with a lot of amazing organizations, such as Dock to Dish, which is a Montauk, which is on Long Island, alliance of commercial fishermen and shellfish harvesters. And they operate what's considered a community-supported fishery program and the first ever restaurant-supported fishery program. So they are a leader in sourcing and distribution of curated artisanal New York seafood, and they do directly from dock to supply. So there's no middleman. So these are local fishermen of Long Island in New York selling directly to the source. So there's that idea of transparency that Guy Dean was telling us about. They also partner with Sea to Table, which is out of Brooklyn, and they work with local fishermen from small-scale wild fisheries and helping them to find a better market for their catch, because wild fisheries are a lot more difficult to fish in, and you're not going to see kind of that picture-perfect salmon or that picture-perfect tuna. So they are all about bringing a connection between the fisherman and the chef and providing diners with as fresh fish as possible. They also work a lot with Waves for Water, which is a community-based partnership that brings clean water to communities in need around the world. So they don't just work in the United States, but they work in a lot of third world countries as well. They are known for their strategic disaster relief efforts, and they take what's kind of considered a no-nonsense attitude towards making global change. They are ready to kind of put out the fight. So I'm going to send the information about Seymour's if anyone ever finds themselves in New York City and wants to grab a sustainable bite to eat. That is their information. I have not eaten there, but I'm planning on going soon. And going back to the kind of state of sustainable seafood and 2015, a study done of the seafood consumed in the United States in 2015 showed that over 2/3 consisted of farmed shrimp, farmed salmon, farmed tilapia, and canned tuna. So really not at all wild species or kind of underappreciated species, which is like carp and dogfish and catfish, all of which are in sustainable numbers in the United States. So in 2015, we kind of saw that sustainable fishing wasn't taking priority, although it did come to light as a human rights issue, especially with the idea of shrimp. Like I said, when I was talking to Guy Dean, I am almost like a very angry person when it comes to shrimp. I guilt trip a lot of my friends when they try to eat it, because right now the shrimp has seen a whole lot of investigative articles connecting it with slave labor and human trafficking. Everything from the way it's caught, which is using giant nets, to the fact that they generally used slave labor to peel the shrimp. It's one of the most popular seafoods out there and one of the most unsustainable. 1 pound of shrimp creates 26 pounds of bycatch. That's 26 pounds of stuff from the ocean that isn't used in any capacity, which is terrifying, in my opinion. And then the last bit about the seafood that I want to share with you guys, and it will be in the group chat, and I'm also going to post a link to it on our Facebook page and all of our social media, is this really great app that was created by the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California. And it is called the Seafood Watch app. And it gives you up-to-date seafood recommendations. You can search by common market name, and especially for people who really like sushi, like me, you can search for the common market name of the sushi or the Japanese name. It also provides a list of restaurants and stores near you that serve ocean-friendly seafood. So like what was spoken about with Ocean-Wise, it has this special marking if you were ever to be in Vancouver, saying that this fish has been kind of sustainability certified. So it'll give you a list of stores and restaurants that have sustainable seafood available to you. It's been redesigned, so they're always updating it, and it gives you kind of a good list of what seafood, according to their criteria, is considered sustainable. And that's, like I said, always being updated, because something that's sustainable today might be deemed unsustainable next week. Conversely, something that's unsustainable may be deemed sustainable. So, and it's entirely created by scientists who research very deeply. They go into white papers and government reports, journal articles. They contact fish farm experts, fishermen to create this app. And it's updated generally every 6 months. So I have it on my phone, and I don't really eat a lot of seafood, but I think it's just kind of cool being able to pull up on my phone, like, oh, I sound like such an expert then. Oh yeah, this tuna was not sustainably caught, or yeah, this special breed, it was farmed, so maybe we should look for something wild. So it's a lot of information kind of in the palm of your hand. So I totally suggest giving that a download and a try, especially if you are an avid seafood eater. Let's see. There was one more thing I wanted to touch upon. Oh, right. Duh. So, as I was saying, and as Mr. Dean was saying, he works for a company called Albion Fisheries, and they are based out of Canada. But here is their website. If you want to look more about kind of their commitment to sustainability and what they do on the daily. So they're a really great company, especially because it's his work hours right now, so he took time out to give us a nice little chat. So let's see. Does anyone have any kind of general questions about either anything that we've spoken about in the past hour and a half or anything else? Let me see. No? Cool. I like that. All right. There was one more video that I want. It closed on me. Don't mind me, guys. My computer's being silly. There we go. Hold on. Share screen. Awesome. Share screen. Let me make this bigger.
This is a fish. Some fish are wild, which means a fisherman caught them out of the ocean. Other fish are farmed, which means they were raised in an enclosed aquaculture system, like a cow farm, but in the water. And there are endless fish in the sea, right? Wrong. Let's start with the wild ones. Wild fish are being caught in a way that cannot last. 85% of the world's fisheries are currently being overtaxed, meaning wild fish are being caught at a faster rate than they can reproduce. Here's another problem that comes up with wild fish. Some fishing methods catch all kinds of additional sea life that end up dying as a result. This is called bycatch. For instance, trawls get dragged along the ocean floor, disrupting the ecosystem and catching sea turtles and unwanted fish. Long lines snag tons of innocent bycatch as well. These methods are definitely not sustainable. A wild fish is sustainable if it's caught in a way that doesn't threaten the long-term survival of its species or the ecosystem it's a part of. Hook and line fishing, harpooning, and some uses of traps are often more sustainable methods of catching fish. With these methods, bycatch is minimal and unwanted fish can be released. Okay, so now let's talk about fish farms. Seems like they're happy places, right? Well, not always. Some farm-raised fish are from poorly run fish farms. They pollute the oceans with their waste. They also risk releasing their fish into the wild, and since farm fish are often genetically different from wild fish, this can change the wild populations and upset the natural ecosystem. A sustainable farm is careful about keeping their fish separate from wild populations, what they feed their fish, and what they're putting in the ocean. So, you're partial to your sushi, but you don't want to be a selfish jerk. What can you do? Well, if you're going to eat fish, make sure it's sustainable. Sustainability is on a fish-by-fish basis, so being responsible takes a little bit of work, but it's worth it. Here's how you find sustainable fish without having to memorize a long list of options. First, check the label. For farmed fish, look for the Aquaculture Stewardship Council logo. And for wild fish, look for the Marine Stewardship Council logo. Next, try to shop at supermarkets that only stock fish from responsible farms and fisheries. The best options are Whole Foods, Safeway, Wegmans, and Trader Joe's. Finally, download Monterey Bay Aquarium's app, Seafood Watch. Then when you shop, you can enter the name of any fish and know whether or not to buy it. This is a sustainable fish. Let's keep it that way.
Am I still sharing the screen? My Zoom went away. Oh no. Oh, wait. Stop share. There we go. So yeah, I thought that was a really cute little to the point video, especially because I realized that people might not have known the difference between what is wild caught and what really fish farming or farmed fish is and aquaculture, because it's kind of a weird concept, because when you think of farms, like they said, you think of like cows and maybe like the prairie and some like chickens running around, but it's not that way. Awesome. I wanted to end, I'm a little bit of a quote. I love quotes. And I was reading this speech made by Rachel Carson, who, among other things, wrote most notably Silent Spring. And I really wanted to end this forum with this quote because I thought it was very fitting for moving into 2016 with this sustainable idea. We stand now where two roads diverge. But unlike the roads in Robert Frost's familiar poem, they are not equally fair. The road we have long been traveling is deceptively easy, a smooth superhighway on which we progress with great speed, but at its end lies disaster. The other fork of the road, the one less traveled by, offers our last, our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of the earth. When I read that quote, my mind automatically went to our oceans and to this fishery crisis and making smarter choices. For a long time when we're purchasing seafood, I feel like we have taken this deceptively easy superhighway where we can just go to the store and have the ocean in front of us and have our choice of food. And it's not like that a lot of the places in the world, and it shouldn't necessarily be like that. But if we take the other one, we take the fork in the road, the one less traveled, and we make smarter decisions, whether it's choosing to not eat a certain type of fish or to make a smarter choice when buying fish, we can help in a little way preserve our earth and our oceans. And so I thought that kind of quote by Rachel Carson was very appropriate for our Sustainable Sea forums. So, Julene, anything?
That was beautiful. I also love to end with quotes, so thank you for that. It's very pertinent and eloquent. I thought this was a fantastic forum. You guys were all so engaged. Thank you, Kevin, for that awesome best practice session. And Guy Dean was really cool. I'm really glad we got to speak directly with him. That was a really great opportunity. So yeah, you also shared a lot of wonderful resources. If you guys want to check out the group chat, you can actually, I believe, save the chat. So that's a useful little tool. And I'll be sending a post-form survey just to get some feedback. So it'd be great if you guys could all take that. And I hope you guys keep following the campaign and tune into the next forum. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, and I will see you guys in February.
Yes, and thank you, Emily. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Thank you for leading this great forum. How could I forget?
No problem.
Yeah, I hope to see you all in February.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye.